The text message glowed on the screen, a beacon of betrayal in our darkened bedroom. I held my husband's phone in my shaking hand, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Who is she, Mark?" I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He stood there, a towel slung low on his hips, water dripping from his hair onto the hardwood floor, a picture of casual indifference. He actually laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Sarah, you're being ridiculous. It's no one." But I'd seen the previews. The "can't wait to see you" and the little heart emojis. I wasn't letting it go this time. "Let me see the phone, Mark. If it's no one, then unlock it and show me." His face hardened, the charming mask he wore for the world melting away to reveal the cold, cruel stranger beneath. We wrestled for the phone, a pathetic, silent struggle under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. My thumb accidentally swiped the screen, opening the message thread for a split second. And that's when I saw the sender's name. My breath hitched. The air in my lungs turned to ice. My blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid in my veins. It wasn't a woman's name. It was the name of the one person I had trusted with my deepest fears. The one person who was supposed to be helping me save my marriage. And in that one horrifying moment, I didn't just realize my husband was having an affair. I realized my entire life, my reality, was a meticulously crafted lie, and I was the only one who hadn't been given a script. Before I tell you who it was, and how I took back my life from the people who tried to destroy me, I need you to do a few things for me. Please hit that like button right now. It helps so much. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope you'll subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're watching from. It means the world to know we're all in this together. Trust me when I say this. You are going to want to stick around for every last detail of this story, because the truth was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. To understand the depth of the betrayal, you have to understand the life he almost succeeded in taking from me. You have to see the picture I thought was a masterpiece, only to find out it was a forgery painted over a canvas of lies. For 20 years, I was Sarah Miller, devoted wife to the brilliant and charismatic Mark Miller, doting mother to our two beautiful children, Leo, who was 10, and Mia, who was 7. We lived in a sprawling 2-story colonial in a quiet, tree-lined suburb of Chicago, the kind of place where neighbors brought you cookies when you moved in, and kids left their bikes on the lawn without a second thought. It was the house I had helped design. I should have been an architect. I had the degree, the passion, the talent. I'd graduated top of my class. But when Mark's career in finance began to take off, and then Leo came along, we made a decision together. Or rather, Mark convinced me it was the best decision for the family. He said my talent was too big for some corporate firm. Its true purpose was to build a perfect home for our children. And like a fool, I believed him. So I poured my creativity into our home. I obsessed over every detail, from the open concept kitchen with its warm butcher block island where the kids did their homework, to the cozy reading nook I built under the stairs, to the sprawling vegetable garden in the backyard. The house became my career, my masterpiece. It was a physical manifestation of my love and dedication. Our daily routine was a well-oiled machine, orchestrated by me. I was up at 6 every morning to pack lunches with little notes tucked inside. I made sure their breakfasts were healthy, their clothes were clean, their homework was done. I drove them to school, to soccer practice, to ballet. I was the class mom, the one who organized the bake sales and chaperoned the field trips. I knew all their friends, their teachers, their secret fears and wildest dreams. My life revolved around the gravitational pull of my family. And to the outside world, we were perfect. The Millers. We were the envy of the neighborhood. Women would stop me at the grocery store and tell me how lucky I was. "Mark is just the best husband," they'd gush. "He talks about you all the time." Our Christmas cards were legendary, perfectly posed photos of our smiling, happy family, always in coordinating outfits. At family gatherings, my own parents would praise him endlessly. "You picked a good one, Sarah," my dad would say, clapping Mark on the back. "He takes such good care of you." I had sacrificed my financial independence, my career, my own identity, and handed them all to Mark on a silver platter. I managed our home, our children, our social lives, so he could be free to conquer the world. I thought we were a team. I was the foundation, and he was the structure rising towards the sky. What I didn't know was that he was secretly digging out that foundation, planning to watch the whole thing collapse with me inside. Our love story was the kind they write books about. We were college sweethearts. I was a studious architecture major, always buried in blueprints in the library. He was the charming business student who could talk his way into anything. He saw me from across the room one day, surrounded by sketches, a smudge of charcoal on my nose. He walked over, didn't say a word, just gently wiped the smudge from my face with his thumb, and smiled. "You missed a spot," he said. And that was it. I was a goner. He was romantic, attentive, ambitious. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. He proposed 2 years after graduation on a trip to the coast. He'd led me down to the beach at sunset, and when I turned around, he was on one knee, a simple, elegant ring in his hand, the waves crashing behind him. Our wedding was a dream, a small, intimate affair with our closest friends and family. I remember standing at the altar, looking into his eyes as he choked up during his vows, promising to love and protect me for the rest of our lives. I believed every single word. I built my entire world on the foundation of those promises, a foundation made of sand. Looking back now, the red flags were there. They weren't just flags. They were giant, flashing neon billboards, and I drove right past them, willfully blind. It started subtly, about 2 years before that night in the bedroom. The first sign was his phone. For 15 years, his phone was our phone. It lay on the kitchen counter, on the nightstand, password-free. The kids would use it to play games. I'd use it to look up a recipe if my hands were dirty. Then, one day, it had a password. "New security protocol from work," he said breezily. "They're getting really strict about it." I didn't question it. Why would I? I trusted him. Then the phone started living in his pocket. It went with him to the bathroom. When he sat on the sofa, he'd place it screen down on the cushion beside him. If it buzzed, he'd snatch it up with a quick, furtive movement, angling the screen away from me as he typed. I told myself it was just work. He was important. His job was demanding. I was being silly. Then his schedule began to change. The late nights at the office became a regular occurrence, stretching from 1 night a week to 3 or 4. "We're closing a huge deal," he'd say, sighing with performative exhaustion. "Just a few more weeks of this, honey. I promise." The weeks turned into months. Then came the business trips. Suddenly, he was flying to Denver, to San Francisco, to New York, sometimes with less than a day's notice. He'd send pictures of his hotel room, a selfie from a client dinner. But something always felt off. I once asked him about a restaurant he claimed to have visited in Denver, a place my friend had recommended. He fumbled, couldn't remember what he ate, and quickly changed the subject. I brushed it off. He was tired, overworked. My mind was playing tricks on me. His appearance changed too. He joined an expensive, exclusive gym downtown and started working out obsessively. He bought a whole new wardrobe of tailored suits and designer shirts. He started wearing a new, musky cologne that I hated. It didn't smell like him. It smelled like a stranger. At the same time, he became more critical of me. "Are you really going to wear that?" he'd ask as I was getting ready to go to the grocery store in my usual yoga pants and sweatshirt. "You've kind of let yourself go, haven't you?" The comments were like 1,000 tiny paper cuts. They stung, and they were designed to make me feel small, unattractive, and insecure. And it worked. I started to believe that the distance between us was my fault. If I just lost 10 pounds, if I dressed up more, if I were more exciting, then the old Mark would come back. The intimacy between us evaporated. It wasn't a sudden stop. It was a slow, painful fade to black. He'd come to bed late, long after I was asleep, and leave early before I was awake. On the rare occasions I tried to initiate anything, he would gently push me away. "I'm so stressed, Sarah," he'd murmur. "This deal is killing me." Or, "I'm just exhausted." I believed him. I'd rub his back and tell him it was okay, that I understood. I was his supportive wife. I defended him to everyone, especially my best friend, Chloe. Chloe had been my maid of honor, the godmother to my children. She saw things I refused to see. "He's different, Sarah," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "He barely looked at you at the barbecue last week. He's cold. Something's wrong." I got defensive. "You don't know what he's going through at work," I snapped. "He's under a lot of pressure. I need to support him, not doubt him." I was so busy defending his honor that I failed to protect my own. Then came the financial oddities. I handled most of our day-to-day bills, but he managed the larger investments and savings. I'd see strange charges on the credit card statement, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, charges from a high-end lingerie store. "Client gifts," he'd say. "You know how it is." One time, I noticed a $5,000 withdrawal from our savings account. When I asked him about it, his eyes went cold. "It was a bad investment I made. I was embarrassed to tell you. Don't worry about it. I'll make it back." He made me feel like I was prying, like I was questioning his ability to provide for us. He was gaslighting me, and I was inhaling the fumes like oxygen. Every time my intuition screamed at me that something was terribly wrong, he would twist it, turning my valid concerns into evidence of my own instability. "You're getting paranoid, Sarah," he'd say, his voice laced with mock concern. "Maybe it's because you're home all day. You have too much time to think, to invent problems." He suggested I was depressed. He said maybe I needed to talk to someone, a professional. He even had a name for me, Dr. Evelyn Evans. "She's the best," he said. "She's helped a few of the guys at work and their wives. She's saved marriages." He was so convincing, so seemingly concerned for my well-being. So I made the appointment. I went to see the woman who was sleeping with my husband, and I paid her $200 an hour to help him destroy me. The night it all came crashing down was a Tuesday, October 27th. I'll never forget that date. It seared into my memory like a brand. The kids were asleep, their gentle breathing a soft rhythm in the quiet house. Mark was in the shower, the sound of the water a distant hiss. I was in bed, trying to read, but the words just swam on the page. A feeling of dread had been sitting in the pit of my stomach all day, heavy and cold. His phone was on the nightstand. Usually, he took it everywhere, but he must have forgotten it in his haste to wash away the day. Or something else. It was screened down, as always. Then it buzzed. a short, sharp vibration against the wood. I ignored it. A minute later, it buzzed again, and again, and again. A rapid succession of messages. It was nearly 11 o'clock at night. What client was messaging him like that? Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to leave it alone. Don't look. You won't like what you find. But after months, years of being made to feel crazy, I needed to know. I needed proof that it wasn't all in my head. My hand trembled as I reached out and picked it up. I turned it over. The screen was locked, but the message previews were right there, glowing in the dark. Thinking of our weekend? Can't stop smiling. You felt so good. Wish you were here with me instead of there with her. Followed by a string of heart and kissy face emojis. I couldn't breathe. It was real. All of it. The late nights, the trips, the distance. It was all real. I wasn't crazy. I was being cheated on. I sat there, frozen, the phone clutched in my hand, the words burning into my retinas. The sound of the shower stopped. A few minutes later, he walked into the bedroom, rubbing his hair with a towel, humming softly. He saw me. He saw the phone in my hand. He saw the look on my face, and he stopped. The humming died in his throat. "What are you doing with my phone?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. I stood up, my legs feeling like they were made of concrete. I held the phone out to him. "Who is she, Mark?" I asked again, my voice shaking but clear. He tried to bluff. He scoffed, ran a hand through his damp hair. "Sarah, I told you, you're being ridiculous. It's a running joke with one of the guys from work. You're taking it out of context." A joke? Did he really think I was that stupid? The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long finally boiled over. A joke? You felt so good is a joke? Wish you were here with me instead of there with her is a joke? Stop lying to me! I shouted, the sound raw and foreign in our quiet bedroom. "Let me see the phone, Mark. If it's a joke, unlock it and show me the messages. Show me right now." His face changed then. The denial evaporated, replaced by a cornered animal's panic. "Give me my phone, Sarah." He lunged for it, but I pulled it back. We grappled for it, a clumsy, desperate struggle. My fingers fumbled on the screen, and for a single, life-altering second, the lock screen vanished and the open message thread appeared. His hand clamped down on mine, but it was too late. I had already seen it. At the top of the screen, where the sender's name should have been, was a name I knew all too well. It wasn't Jessica, or Emily, or some other name I had been imagining. It was Dr. Evans. Dr. Evelyn Evans, my therapist, the woman I had been pouring my heart out to every Wednesday for the past 6 months. The woman Mark had insisted I see. The woman who had told me my suspicions about my husband were a manifestation of my own insecurities and anxieties. The woman who had prescribed me anti-anxiety medication. The woman who was supposed to be helping me. The phone slipped from my grasp and clattered to the floor. The sound was deafening in the sudden ringing silence. I stumbled backward until my legs hit the edge of the bed, and I collapsed onto it. My mind was a whirlwind of disconnected images. Me, sitting on her plush leather sofa, crying about how distant Mark had become. Her, nodding sympathetically, a pen poised over her notepad. "It sounds like you're feeling very insecure in your role now that the children are older," she had said in her calm, soothing voice. Sometimes, when a woman gives up her career, she projects that sense of loss onto her marriage. Every session, every piece of advice, every insight she had offered. It wasn't therapy. It was a script. It was a strategy. They had been working together from the very beginning to methodically dismantle my sanity, to paint me as an unstable, paranoid wife so that when this day came, no one would believe me. The affair wasn't the betrayal. The affair was just a symptom. The betrayal was this calculated, Machiavellian plot to destroy my mind. I looked up at Mark. The panic on his face was gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. The mask wasn't just off. It had been shattered. The man I had loved for 20 years, the father of my children, was gone. In his place stood a monster. "Now you know," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just looked annoyed, like I had inconveniently uncovered his secret. He picked up his phone from the floor, turned, and walked out of the bedroom, closing the door softly behind him, leaving me alone in the ruins of my life. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at the closed door. It could have been minutes or hours. The world had tilted on its axis, and I was just trying to find something to hold on to. Finally, a single guttural sob tore its way out of my chest. And then another, and another. I curled into a ball on the bed and cried until my body ached and my throat was raw. I cried for the 20 years I had wasted, for the love I thought was real, for the family I had built that was now just a pile of rubble. I spent that night on the sofa in the living room, wrapped in a throw blanket, shivering even though the house was warm. Sleep was impossible. My mind was a relentless carousel of memories, each one now tainted and grotesque. Every "I love you," every shared laugh, every tender moment was now a lie. I replayed every therapy session with her, Dr. Evans. I saw her sympathetic smiles, her knowing nods. I heard her voice, gently guiding me toward the conclusion that I was the problem. She had taken my deepest vulnerabilities, the ones I had shared with her in what I thought was a sacred, confidential space, and handed them to my husband like a weapon. He wasn't just cheating on me. They were collaborating on my psychological destruction. Sometime around 3 a.m., something inside me shifted. The gut-wrenching sobs subsided, replaced by a cold, hard knot of rage in my stomach. The tears dried up. The weak, heartbroken woman who had collapsed on the bed a few hours earlier was gone. She died in that room. In her place was someone else. Someone I hadn't met in a very long time. She was cold, she was clear-headed, and she was furious. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a paranoid, insecure housewife they could manipulate and discard. They had underestimated me. They had made a grave mistake. I was not going to crumble. I was not going to let them take my children, my home, my sanity. I was going to fight, and I was going to burn their whole world to the ground. The first thing I did as the sun began to stream through the windows was pick up my phone. My hands were steady now. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed Chloe's name. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Sarah, what's wrong? It's 5 a.m. "He's having an affair," I said, my voice eerily calm. "And you're not going to believe who it is with." I told her everything, the phone, the texts, the name. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then a string of curses that made me almost smile. "I'm coming over," she said. "Don't talk to him. Don't do anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. True to her word, she was on my doorstep in a whirlwind of righteous fury, a thermos of strong coffee in one hand and a box of tissues in the other. She listened to the whole sordid story again, her face growing darker with every word. When I was done, she didn't offer platitudes or tell me it would be okay. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Okay, so how do we destroy them?" It was the first time I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't alone in this. Chloe knew people. Her cousin was a paralegal at one of the top family law firms in the city. "You don't need a divorce lawyer, Sarah," she said, pacing my kitchen. "You need a warrior? You need Eleanor Vance?" An hour later, Chloe had secured me an emergency consultation for that afternoon. I got the kids ready for school, my movements robotic, my face a carefully constructed mask of normalcy. Mark had slept in the guest room. He came down for coffee, acting as if nothing had happened, the arrogance rolling off him in waves. He thought he had already won. He thought I would just fall apart. I smiled at him, a brittle, empty smile. "Have a good day at work, honey," I said. He looked momentarily surprised by my composure, but then his smugness returned. "You too," he said, and walked out the door. The moment it clicked shut, I let out the breath I had been holding. The acting had begun. That afternoon, I sat in Eleanor Vance's office. It was sleek and modern, with a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. Eleanor was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She listened to my entire story without interruption, her expression unreadable. When I finished, I felt emotionally drained, exposed. I expected pity, or maybe even skepticism. Instead, she leaned forward, a predatory gleam in her eyes. "This is not a divorce case, Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice a low, dangerous purr. "This is a conspiracy case. It is gross professional misconduct. It is intentional infliction of emotional distress. What your husband and Dr. Evans have done is not just immoral, it is actionable on multiple fronts. We are not just going to divorce him. We are going to strip him of his assets, his reputation, and his freedom. And we are going to make sure Dr. Evelyn Evans never practices therapy in this state, or any other, ever again." For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a surge of power. This wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. Eleanor laid out the strategy. It was brilliant and terrifying. "For now," she said, "you go home and you play the part of the broken wife. You are devastated. You are confused. You might even apologize for snooping. You cannot, under any circumstances, let him know that you have seen me or that you know the full extent of his plan. They think you're a mess. We need them to keep thinking that. An underestimated opponent is a vulnerable one." The plan was to let Mark and Dr. Evans continue their scheme, all while we were gathering an arsenal of evidence against them. We needed bank records, emails, phone logs, and proof of their affair. Most importantly, we needed to prove their collusion, that Dr. Evans was using her professional position to intentionally harm me for their mutual benefit. "They've given us the rope," Eleanor said with a grim smile. "Now, we just let them hang themselves with it." The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to live in the same house with my betrayer, acting like the fragile, crumbling victim he expected me to be. I cried. I begged him to tell me what I did wrong. I played the part of a lifetime. The most difficult performance was my final therapy session. With a micro recorder Eleanor had given me tucked into my bra, I walked into Dr. Evans' office. She greeted me with that same look of false, cloying sympathy. "Sarah, I'm so glad you came in. Mark told me you had a difficult night." I broke down, playing my part. I told her I found messages, that I was scared I was losing him. And she, the viper, sat there and twisted the knife. "Well, Sarah," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We've talked about this. Your insecurity can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes when a man feels constantly suspected, he can be pushed towards the very behavior his partner fears." She was coaching me to blame myself. She was actively covering for her lover and gaslighting his wife, her patient. Listening to the recording later with Eleanor, the cold, clinical cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was our first solid piece of evidence of her misconduct. Next, we went after the money. On Eleanor's advice, I hired a forensic accountant named Ben, a quiet, unassuming man who was a bulldog when it came to numbers. I gave him the bank statements I had access to, and he started digging. It didn't take him long to find the rot. Mark hadn't just been spending money on his affair. He had been systematically bleeding our finances dry. He had set up shell corporations. He was diverting funds from his bonuses and our investment accounts into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. He had taken out a second mortgage on our home, the home I had designed, the home my name was also on, by forging my signature. The forgery was so good, I wouldn't have known if Ben hadn't found the paperwork. He had stolen millions of dollars from our family. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to leave me with nothing but debt. While Ben was tracing the money, Chloe and I became private investigators. We pieced together their timeline using credit card statements. We found hotel receipts for his business trips, always for two. We found flight manifests with both their names on them. They had been to Paris, to Rome, to the Caribbean, all on our money. They weren't just having a sordid affair. They were living a luxurious second life at my expense. Every discovery was another stab to the heart. But with each piece of evidence, my resolve hardened. The grief was burning away, leaving behind something cold and sharp, like steel. The biggest breakthrough, however, came from the most unexpected source. My son, Leo. He had been quiet and withdrawn since the night he'd heard me shouting. He knew something was wrong. One evening, he came into my home office where I was poring over documents with Eleanor. He was holding his iPad. "Mom," he said quietly, "I think you should see this." He explained that his school iPad was still linked to Mark's master Apple account. Mark, in his arrogance, had never bothered to change the passwords or unlink the devices. Leo had seen strange appointments popping up on his father's calendar. They were labeled lunch with Dr. E, not at her office, but at a private, members-only club downtown. But that wasn't the worst of it. Leo, being a curious and tech-savvy kid, had been exploring the shared iCloud drive. He found a folder. It was password protected, but he had watched his dad type it in once. Our wedding anniversary. The irony was sickening. He opened the folder for us. It was titled Project Nightingale. My blood ran cold. Nightingale was my childhood nickname, the name only my late father used to call me. To see him use that to twist something so precious and pure was a unique kind of evil. The folder was a treasure trove of their depravity. There were drafted legal affidavits, signed by Dr. Evans on her professional letterhead, declaring me mentally unstable, prone to hysteria, and an unfit mother. There were detailed financial plans for how Mark would liquidate all our assets once I was institutionalized or otherwise incapacitated. There were emails between them, discussing their future, their plans to move to a villa in Tuscany they had already picked out. They weren't just planning a divorce. They were planning my complete and utter destruction. They were going to take my children, my money, and my freedom, and leave me with a fabricated diagnosis of mental illness. Leo, my quiet, observant 10-year-old boy, had single-handedly uncovered their entire endgame. I hugged him so tightly, tears streaming down my face. He wasn't just my son, he was my hero. And he had just handed us the cannon we needed to win the war. With the Project Nightingale files, we had everything. The financial fraud, the ethical violations, the conspiracy. It was all there, in black and white, authored by them. Eleanor's eyes lit up when she saw it. "It's time," she said. "We spring the trap." We didn't want this to play out over months in a messy court battle. We wanted to end it in one swift, decisive blow. Eleanor arranged what she called a four-way settlement conference. Me and her, Mark, and his lawyer. The pretense was to discuss an amicable separation, to spare the children a lengthy fight. Mark, arrogant as ever, readily agreed. His lawyer, a slick man named Peterson, was clearly in on the plan to paint me as unstable. At Eleanor's suggestion, I made a special request. I told Mark that for me to agree to any custody arrangement, I needed to hear from a neutral third party. I needed Dr. Evans to be there, to provide her professional, unbiased opinion on what was best for the children. Mark and his lawyer thought this was a brilliant idea. They thought I was walking into my own execution. They had no idea I was the one holding the axe. The day of the confrontation arrived. I walked into the conference room at Eleanor's firm, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. Mark was already there with Peterson, looking smug. A few minutes later, Dr. Evans walked in, radiating an aura of calm professionalism and fake concern for me. She and Mark exchanged a subtle, knowing glance. They thought they held all the cards. The meeting began. Peterson launched into their prepared attack. He spoke of my increasing paranoia, my emotional instability, my unfounded accusations. He painted a picture of a devoted husband at his wits' end, worried for his wife's mental health and the well-being of his children. Then he turned the floor over to Dr. Evans. She cleared her throat, adjusted her glasses, and began. "In my professional opinion," she started, her voice smooth and convincing, "Sarah is suffering from significant anxiety and delusional ideation. It would be in the children's best interest to be in a more stable environment with their father, while Sarah receives the intensive help she needs." She looked at me with pity, the same look she had given me for 6 months as she methodically destroyed my life. I just stared at her. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then, I looked at Eleanor and gave her a slight nod. Eleanor smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "Thank you, Doctor," she said politely. "That's a very compelling narrative. However, we have a slightly different one we'd like to present." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small digital recorder, placing it on the polished mahogany table. "This is a recording of my client's final session with you, Doctor. The one where you advised her that her husband's infidelity was likely a self-fulfilling prophecy caused by her own insecurity." Dr. Evans's face went white. Peterson started to bluster, objecting, but Eleanor just raised a hand to silence him. "Oh, but there's more," she said, her voice dripping with ice. She clicked a button on her laptop, and the large screen on the wall flickered to life. Projected for everyone to see was the contents of the Project Nightingale folder. The fraudulent affidavits, the emails detailing their plans to have me committed, the plans to flee the country with my children and my money. Mark leaped to his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is illegal! You hacked my files! This is inadmissible!" he screamed. Peterson was frantically trying to calm him down. Dr. Evans looked like she was about to faint. "It wasn't hacked, Mr. Miller," Eleanor said calmly. "It was discovered on a family device by your 10-year-old son. I believe the courts will find it quite admissible." Just then, there was a knock on the conference room door. "And as for the legality of Dr. Evans' professional conduct," Eleanor continued as the door opened, "we thought we'd get an expert opinion." 2 men and a woman walked into the room. Eleanor made the introductions. "Mark Miller, Dr. Evelyn Evans. I'd like you to meet Mr. Davies from the state's Attorney General's office, Detective Miller from the Chicago PD's Financial Crimes Unit, and Dr. Albright, the head of the state's Psychological Licensing Board. They've been listening in from the next room and have found our conversation quite illuminating." The collapse was instantaneous and absolute. Dr. Evans made a small, choking sound and slumped in her chair, utterly defeated. Mark's face, which had been contorted in rage, crumbled into a mask of pure terror. He stared at the officials, then at me, and in his eyes, I saw it all. The realization that the game was over. He had underestimated me. He had thought I was a fragile doll he could break and discard. He never imagined that I would find the strength to not only fight back, but to build a better, stronger trap than he ever could. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Dr. Evans' license was immediately suspended. She faced a mountain of legal trouble, including criminal fraud charges and a civil lawsuit from me that would strip her of every penny she had ever earned. Her career was over. Her reputation was in ashes. Mark was arrested right there in the conference room for the wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. His company fired him the next day. The scandal was epic. In the divorce settlement, he had zero leverage. I got everything. The house, full custody of the children, a significant portion of the assets the authorities were able to freeze, and massive punitive damages. He was left with nothing but his legal bills and his public shame. Last I heard, he was serving a 7-year prison sentence. They tried to destroy me, but in the end, they only destroyed themselves. It's been 2 years now since that day. The first year was about healing, about rebuilding. I sold that house. It was beautiful, but it was tainted with memories. I used the money from the sale and the settlement to buy a new place, a modern townhouse in the city, filled with light and laughter. And I went back to work. I started my own small architecture firm, Nightingale Design. I took back the name he tried to use to destroy me and turned it into a symbol of my rebirth. I specialize in designing homes for women starting over, creating spaces that are not just beautiful, but are sanctuaries for healing and new beginnings. My business is thriving. I am more creatively fulfilled and financially secure than I ever thought possible. My children, Leo and Mia, are happy. Removing the toxic presence of their father and the suffocating tension from our lives allowed them to blossom. Leo is my rock, a wise soul in a young body. His bravery saved us, and I tell him that every day. We are closer than ever, a tight-knit unit of 3. I am no longer the naive, self-sacrificing woman who believed in fairy tales. The betrayal forged me into someone stronger, someone wiser. I learned to trust my own instincts, to listen to that quiet voice inside that tells you when something is wrong. I found a strength I never knew I possessed. I am not just a survivor. I am a warrior. I rebuilt my life not from the ashes of my old one, but from a brand new foundation, one that I laid myself brick by brick. So if you are watching this and you are in a situation where something feels wrong, I want you to hear me. Trust your gut. That feeling in the pit of your stomach is not paranoia. It is your intuition screaming at you to pay attention. Do not let anyone, no matter how much you love them, convince you that you are crazy. Your reality is valid. The truth will always, always come to light. You are so much stronger than you know, and you are not alone. You can and you will get through this, and you will come out the other side not broken, but remade. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. It means the world to me to be able to share it with this community. If any part of this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And please share your own stories of strength and survival in the comments below. We heal by knowing we're not alone. Stay strong, stay blessed, and remember, you hold the pen. You get to write the next chapter. I'll see you in the next video.